about 53 years ago, Blanche and I, and a group of others, we're trying to remember who, possibly Barry Kaplan, Jane Hendrickson, we're in a car following Rudy, who was being driven by somebody, up to a place called Big Indian, which sounded absurd. And it was an old, kind of a Jewish Catskill resort that he was thinking of buying as a retreat for his students when his teacher, Swami Muktananda, came to America. And we had no idea what we were getting into. There were about 8 of us, I guess. What was wonderful on the drive, to be honest, is Blanche used to go to camp not too far from here. And so she was just excited the entire time. And I kept driving and looking at the incredible mountains and going, God, this place is really beautiful. And then we arrived here and there was this derelict hotel, this space that we're in right now, which was pretty derelict as well. An empty swimming pool filled with paint peeling all over it. And I looked at all of that and I went, oh my God, Rudy, no way. You know, this is not a place for you or for anybody in the future. And all I could see was this smile on Rudy's face, like, wow, there's going to be so much work here. And he loved the idea of work for a lot of reasons, spiritual work and physical work, and they weren't all that different because they were what provoked this experience that he called, you know, growing, letting us grow as human beings. And I watched him walk the property, and whereas I was walking like this, he was walking like his stomach was way out, and his chest was way open and back, and he was like luxuriating in Big Indian. It was like heaven, and I could not see heaven, but of course that was where I was at, and it was where Rudy was at, and I looked at work as like, oh no, and he looked at work as, oh yes, and somehow or another, he decided this was the place. We are now sitting in what was the theater, I guess, for the hotel, soon to become a meditation hall, and now has evolved into a whole other universe, a Tibetan monastic space. I don't know if you even would call it that, a retreat space. It's
Retreat space.
Okay, Bodhivatsu Foundation, which in a way has taken on the legacy, if you will, of Rudy and maintained it in a unbelievably beautiful way. And this is the first class I have given in the transformed space, and I am really struck by the potency of it, how much energy is in this room, in this environment, how beautiful it is. And it has really evolved, and the whole area of this space has evolved into something really, really worth celebrating and worth making a pilgrimage to visit. And every one of you who's here today was sort of coming because the word pilgrimage became the operating word, and Daniel and George were very directive in that idea, and I really found that to be beautiful. I can talk forever about Big Indian. I mean, it was a place of work. We had to take the hotel, which is no longer really viable. It was just too much work, but we fixed it up enough so that people could live there. We slept acres of flies off of windowsills. We cleaned rooms, we fixed the bathrooms. And Blanche and I and a whole group of people who had really very little skill set became skilled at doing all sorts of things. And we turned this place into a habitable, welcoming, beautiful, spiritual center. And when Rudy's teacher, Muktananda, came and taught here and out there on the lawn, this place was there and ready and welcoming because all of us began to live up to Rudy's vision. And we lived up to it to enough that it actually worked. It actually functioned as a space that could hold multiples of people. We had hundreds of people that came up. Not everybody stayed here, but they came up. We fed people, and we sat in this room and outside, and Muktananda, Rudy's teacher, would give all of these classes about, you know, his sort of lineage, his teaching, and I would sit, and the only person I ever saw during that period was Rudy. Muktananda just would evaporate into the background. Rudy was like luminous for me, and becoming more so. And he became more so every day here. His practice evolved in extraordinary ways. He became much more dynamic. It was really a time where he started doing hands-on meditation effort, where he would actually touch students and they would go fall right over on the ground. And you know, I was one of those people, and Blanche, and there was a whole bunch of us. You know, the energy was so potent. Like, I had never experienced anything quite at that level, although when I first started meeting Rudy, he would look at me and that would happen. This was a whole other magnitude of transformation. He was breaking down the entire system that I knew of as Bruce, and he was opening me to something else. This space became an opportunity for multiples of people to have that kind of transformation, where they could live and go beyond their ideal, perfect self, individual self, and become something bigger, something more. And the idea of more is not part of our Western culture very much. It's about accomplishing for this person, the egocentric being that we all are. But Rudy was reaching for something much beyond that, a kind of what we might call cosmic self, the greater self. The greater self is not known to most people. It's not something people have, in our culture particularly, gravitated to. In Eastern culture, yes, there's a lot of understanding of the infinite being at the core of who we are. But finding that in the West was very, very, very tricky. And my introduction to it, as you all know, was part of the 60s culture, the drug culture, and the LSD experience of the 1960s catapulted me into a larger consciousness. But I had no idea that there was a half of a world, the Asian world, that already knew about this stuff, and it turned out even the Western world had a mystical teaching and a background that for me became the new doorway to what was important in life, which was the inner self, not just the outer. And for Rudy, they were combined. The inner and the outer were one thing, and he really wanted us to do the outer work in order to affect the inner work. And I could tell, and you've heard this, but when I started studying with Rudy and he started moving into these new buildings and he wanted us to tear down ceilings and put up wallboard and build stuff, and I mean, I went, what? But it was actually learning to be in the real world, the physical world, in order to gain true access to the inner world. And that if you have not begun to understand how to live your material life, trying to go into the inner life is kind of a hard journey to get to, because you're not initiated really into that space. And so what happens is you start to go into fantasy land, if you will. Many, many people are living fantastical spiritual lives. A real spiritual life, which Rudy introduced me to, and all of us in some way through this teaching, introduced us to, is very simple. And it's available to every human being. And it has absolutely everything to do with entering your own inner being, entering inside who you are. And there are doorways, and Rudy talked about the doorways, and you know them. They're called chakras. And there's 7 of them, and each one of them opens inward, and they also open outward. So that if you begin to knock on the door, it will be opened unto you. And the doorways, as you know, there's one at the top of your head, there's one in your third eye, there's one in your throat, there's one in your heart, one in your navel gut chakra, one in your sex chakra, and one at the base of your spine. Learning to open these and watch them really open and then reflect themselves back into the world that we live in is the way to have a truly beautiful, expansive, evolutionary life that allows for a kind of upliftment into something that the world offers to people who decide to go on that journey, to go on that trip. Because I've been lucky enough to know Rudy and lucky enough to know all of you, I have been surrounded by people making that effort. I'm also surrounded by people who have no clue that this is even possible. And it's really interesting to watch the world and watch how it works and to see people who are trying to just navigate the day and make money and take care of the kids and do all that stuff, and then making money stops, and then taking care of the kids stops, and then you're at home, and then you're going, you try maybe reading books and watching TV or playing golf or having a few drinks or having a little smoke or something like that, and you're trying to find ways to fill space and time, but it's wasting time. It's just sitting there until the existential truth of your life explodes in front of you, and there is nothing in you prepared for that at all. Not that it hasn't been always facing you from day one, but most people go into the truth, the larger vision of life, blindly. This is a doorway into that truth, so that you live in a way in concert with this exquisitely unexpected, massive, oceanic space of being that happens to be the support system for your material life. There is this thing inside you that has carried you from the beginning, that was there the minute you were born and opened your eyes when it was actually vibrant in you, and you start to look at how this unknowable, exquisite force makes this. And then, of course, you get totally caught, most of us, in the amazement of this space and the fear of it. It's definitely a yin-yang space. It has light and dark, day and night, has all of that good and evil. And we all come into this space, and we all face it with wonder and then dread and all kinds of other mixtures of things. And we often get lost in it. The initiatory experience, which is often pain, sometimes drugs in my case, something comes knocking at your door and you realize you need help. You need something more than the world can present, and this doorway starts to announce itself. And and it's biblical, in seeking ye shall find, and knock, and it shall be opened unto you, ask and you shall receive. Yes, that's really it. That's really it. And this heart chakra is where Rudy spent a lot of time and made us really dig into this space of love. And he fed us with that space. He hugged us, he gave us, he nurtured us in that space, and he helped us open the door and step inside. But then his teacher, his real teacher, Swami Nityananda, his line was, go into your heart and roam. Not sit, not just, go, okay, I'm here. Roam. And why is it roam? Because it's vast. It's really big, and there's a lot to learn and explore and uncover if you go into your own heart. And that's just a part of the equation, because the journey into emotional life, feeling, caring, and, anger and hatred and all that other stuff is all stuck here. And if you can go in here and really uncover the journey, which exposes you to all of that, you learn after a time how to surrender, which is Rudy's key practice and key idea, to the totality of it and watch it inform your being. And it does. It just speaks to you, and you become a channel, a vehicle for, a vessel for expressing this enormity of care and compassion and love and empathy for others. It's really beautiful. And then hopefully for yourself as well, because that dance is really essential. But that's just one of the centers. And Rudy would come up here to Big Indian. He would sit up on the stage over there with a big statue of Nityananda behind it, and that Nityananda statue was phenomenally blessed and potent as an energy source. And we would all come in here and sit with Rudy in front of that, and this energy would waft through the room, and it would hit all of these centers, and we would start to open our minds to life. We would open this egocentric self, which was, for most people, caught up in its smallness, and it would go like that, and you'd suddenly become a well-spoken, well-articulated human being who found flow here instead of obstruction. You found this open-heartedness. You found this thing at the navel chakra, which I now call the GPS, which is this deep, intuitive knowing that guides you through this life that is so confusing for most people. Then you found this sex chakra, which is both about recreating life in the world and recreating life renewing life, if you will, in you, because one of the things Rudy talked about a lot was death and rebirth, that you go through these processes of the old self falling away and this new self emerging, and that's an amazing thing to watch in this spiritual journey. And then this energy at the base of your spine that rises up, and it rises in a curlicue, which is often called serpent energy in India. It rises up gently, and it goes like that, and it's a powerhouse of energy that opens and expands your head, your brain, your mind, and it takes you into something so far beyond anything you've known or understood or comprehended in your life, into something that cannot be processed in the brain, but it's knowable, it's visible, it's intuitive, it's so core elemental of you that you find that you have arrived at the larger self, your bigger self. It's you. It has always been you. Not to find that, not to go there, is is to have sort of wasted a life on some level. No, I don't think the universe thinks it's wasted. It's using us in its own way for all sorts of things. But for those of us who have awakened to the possibility of discovering the oceanic within, this is an amazing thing. And Rudy would sit right there and introduce us to the oceanic. Then Rudy died in a plane crash way, way before anybody thought his departure could ever happen. And we were all left without a teacher, except there was this. And one of the great lessons of Rudy's departure was you already have a teacher. You already have access to a teacher. You have the doorway inside to where he had always come from. He was the teacher, the access to the teacher, but in the end, the teacher resides inside us, and we are all, luckily, aware of that, which is why you guys are here. This is today a pilgrimage, basically to say thank you to Rudy for driving up here 53 years ago and going, yes, yes. And many of you have actually spent time nailing and hammering and doing work here and making this into what it has become. Some of you have not, but you've supported classes here. When I lived in California, I would fly out here 3 times a year to do classes for the New York students, and everybody would drive up and make an effort to come, which was like spectacular. And this thing, 52, 53 years after Rudy discovered it, and 40, however many years since he passed, is still thriving. And it's still thriving because Rudy invested something in this space that has to do with the eternal. That is not the, how can you call it? It's not just a space of memory. It's not just a space to go, oh yeah, great, it was wonderful. It's living. It's a living space. And some years after Rudy passed, there was a shrine built on the hill, up the hill, over ahead of us, across the road from us. And a statue was made of Rudy that is very, very like the statue of Nityananda. And it was placed there and kind of sat there in a shrine that was, I thought, a very nice shrine, but it turned out it needed endless work. And Bob Sink, others, Sal, people, Daniel would come and take care of the shrine, take care of the statue, finish it with lotions that kept it healthy. And it was an extraordinary thing that that statue and that shrine are here, and that this property, which John Mann kept going for a very long time, but never had the money to really make it as a full-fledged ashram. We could never get the money to repair the hotel enough to make people able to live there for any length of time. It started to fall apart after a while and is in disrepair. But John sustained much of this so we could come here, and then Lama Rangbar brought his Tibetan group, but Bodhivatsu, to this space. And they are now caring for this space, and they have started putting statuary around, including another edifice that's for Rudy's statue, another statue up the hill this way, and various what's the name of the statue? Maruyama statue up the hill. And it's
Tara. It's also an emanation of Tara.
Thank you. It's becoming something that Rudy and now Lama Rangbar have both spoken about, which I think is like extraordinary, which is a spiritual garden. This is a spiritual garden. And people can come here. We can use this sanctuary as a place to teach classes. People can come up here and walk up the hill and stand with Rudy's statue, or walk out to the stupa over here. This is a place of retreat for people from all kinds of spiritual dimensions and practices. It's not just Rudy. It's not just Tibetan. They're behind me, which you can't see, but
you can.
Can you? Oh, great. This is a statue of Padmasambhava, who's one of the great Tibetan teachers. You know, my whole journey started out after the LSD experience, living in a Tibetan monastery in Kathmandu. And my Tibetan roots are very deep and very real and very much appreciated in this space. And and so I have that, I have Rudy, and there's so many different sort of dimensions that are working. And for me to come here as a pilgrimage is like, of course, that's what I would do. But what I want to express is there are places on the planet that are truly pilgrimage spaces. And I've been to a few of them in my life, and they have energy levels that are not like what you experience anywhere else. One of them for me was Bodh Gaya, which is where Buddha had his enlightenment, where the Bodh tree existed. One is Sarnath, where he gave his first lecture. It's called Deer Park because deers run around it. Another, strangely enough, is the Glastonbury Tower in England, which I wouldn't have expected, but Rudy said he went there and he couldn't believe the energy. So I went there with Blanche and the kids, and boy, every one of these places, you walk there and you know your feet are not touching the ground. You are on holy ground. Magically, wonderfully, whatever you want to call it, this has become one of those places. I don't know what to say about that. How did this become that? Well, of course I know because of Rudy, and Rudy and Nityananda and all the teachers that have preceded them. But you guys are on what I would call holy ground. And you can visit here anytime, including anybody listening to this talk, and you will become part of this spiritual garden. And you can walk around and you can go up to the shrine for Rudy or the stupa, and you can experience what it means to be in a space where the feet don't really touch the ground, where you are uplifted by the energy. And the statue of Rudy, don't ask me how this works, I don't understand it. The whole idea of statuary is a very strange thing, but it radiates energy. Nityananda's statue used to radiate energy. Padmasambhava radiates energy. This energy is the spiritual conduit to this inner space. The idea that you can go somewhere and just sit with that energy and let it come in, especially if you open and ask it to. Say, please come. Rudy's words were, please help me surrender. But it's to get yourself out of the way and let this come and enter you, take you on this inner journey, lead you into this inner space, and be blessed by that. This space that we're in right now is one of those spaces in the world. You know, I never imagined Rudy would die. That, you know, that to me was not part of the equation. His death was transformative for all of us because we realized that we had to be the teachers, we had to find the teaching, we had to find the path, and that we were not one of us left without that possibility. But that this place would stay as a shrine for, a holding place for a kind of extraordinary energy is amazing. Silva Ra, who worked on the stupa, you know, and Lama Rengbar. Bob, I'll bring you up over and over again, but there's so many people who caretake this space, and all I can say is it's here. And anyone listening to this talk at some point in time who says, I need to be refreshed, I need to be touched, and you don't feel like going to India or to the Glastonbury tour in England, here's your space. Just to drive up, and it's gorgeous. It's a gorgeous drive. You know, it's just exquisite. It's worth your time, it's worth your energy to find a place where this will connect. If you know anybody who does this practice, that's a gift. You can hug them, they can talk to you about it. If you have a teaching or a teacher, you know, that's really wonderful. My gift is that I can still keep teaching, but I'm gonna have to keep passing, I'm gonna pass the torch, you know, and what I want is for all of you who have the inclination, the hunger, the need to be a conduit, and there are those of you who are doing it already, George, sitting, you know, there are people who are sharing this work, but more of you can do it. And I am, if you need anointing for somebody to say you can do it, all I can tell you is, forgive me, my dramatic self comes out, the world needs you. We are entering a time of, and nobody here doesn't know this, of enormous transformative change in our world on every level. Huge. If there's ever a time for kindness, connectivity, love, energy, spiritual upliftment, it's now. And, you know, if you need me to go, okay, you're anointed. In the old days, you had to be appointed as a teacher. But all of you who feel that you have some way of being with people, it can be a formal sitting like this. It can also be just be a good person. Be an energetic person. Go into the world, open your heart, and offer the kindness and the love and the joy and the beauty that Rudy expressed all the time. You can just do it that way. You don't have to have a formal thing where you are, I got students and I have this and I have that. You don't need that. But if that becomes your calling, let's talk. I mean, more than likely, I'll say, yeah, great, go for it. Because it's not a time, we don't have 50 more years for everybody to finally get enlightened or whatever you think, you know, spiritual life leads to. Your journey is the teaching. Enlightenment's great, whatever it may be. You know, I'm very suspicious of everyone who claims enlightenment as such, but enlightenment is really lightening the load. You carry less, that's all, you carry less. And so there's more of something greater to operate in your space than your personality and your ego and your knowledge base. But this freedom of flow and opening to the ocean of the universe just nurtures people. It just nurtures, and it's an exquisite gift to give. And most of you, if not all of you, I could probably go through the list, you're all really there. You're all really ambassadors, if you will, of Rudy's teaching, of this practice, or something greater. We don't have to give it a name. But you already do that. Keep doing it, because you really are needed. And if you need reinforcement, or you need to find a way of coming back to the core, and you don't know where to go or what to do, you know, that there's nobody around left who's teaching and that you can want to go to, come here. Just come here. Sit with the statue. Go to the stupa. Go to the Marianas statue. Sit in this room. Look at Padmasambhava. And I don't mean to put it all into statuary because it's not that, but it is energetic. And there is real energy, and you all have a hunger for it. You have a access point. You have a gift that you can have for your own self and for everyone around you, and I encourage you to use it. So George, Daniel, thank you for creating the pilgrimage idea for me as something to talk about and to do the class here, because I really am grateful for that. And the energy here is stupendous from my experience of it, and I hope for all of you. And the plan now is, I don't know what time it is, okay, that we'll have some lunch. We will, those who want to, go up to the shrine, or you can go look at the stupa, or wherever you want to go. We don't have chairs in most of these places. I think one day if we get enough donations, we can build benches around there if there's room for them, where people can actually go and sit, because it's worth sitting there. And feel the presence, feel it, and just say thank you. It'll be beautiful. We'll do that. We'll have lunch first, then we'll do that. Depending on the time, we can go for a walk. Anybody who wants to go for a walk. 5 years ago when I was here, I could probably go for a longer walk than I can go for now, but you're welcome to go on longer walks. And then we'll have another class this afternoon, depending upon my 80-year-old energy level. It'll maybe be a little shorter class. And then we'll certainly have time for questions and answers, and well, more questions, maybe answers afterward. And then we'll go to dinner. Sorry, the dinner thing got so confusing this year, but 5 years ago when we did it last, it had a restaurant that had servers and offered, a menu. No longer the case, so it got really complicated this year. But Brent Blanche did heroic work to get it all together, so there will be a dinner tonight at Rio's restaurant in Phoenicia. And then rather than having a 2-day sit, this is a 1-day sit. It's a little bit easier. You don't have to get Airbnbs and things. And then perhaps next year we'll continue. Okay, no predictions, but all I can say is thank you again for coming. You guys are really wonderful, and I thank you, and Rudy thanks you.
Thank you.
Oh, I think the next class will be around 3, that's something like that. One other quick thing. If you wish, it would be nice if you could, we're asking people for donation. I don't usually ever ask for money for the class, but this space is kind of being given to us, and in some ways, they need help too. So there's a little box, it's over there on the table, and it says donations. And if you want, I would say something like, $20, but you can put $2 in, and you can put nothing in. And all I can say is if you, what?
Or even more.
Or even more,
Yeah,
yes.
a lot goes into maintaining the space, and we're using electricity and
Absolutely.
water, so on and so
Right.
on. So
Yeah, I am totally in support, and I have cash in my pocket, and thank you. And also, Blanche and I are gonna take care of the dinner tonight, so you don't have to worry about making this a costly trip for yourselves. We love you guys. Thank you very, very much for everything, and we'll see you in 2 hours.
So Bruce, I would like to introduce at her great reluctance, Maha Govind.
Thank you.
And she is the one of the very foundation points of the Buddhi Vastu Center and what goes on here, and one of the most remarkable cooks I've ever had the honor to work with. And so I wanted to thank her, and in that she has fingers in so many pots, but is there anything you would like to say to give them some, from your perspective, what it is like to be here? And if you have anything you'd like to say.
So forgive me if you're super starving, but I will take a few minutes. Bruce, what you said, I was so honored to hear it, and I really don't have very much more to say, because I really feel that Bruce and Lama, he's really has a vision to keep this as a sanctuary that is welcoming to all. So please take advantage of it and honor us by coming, and we will be grateful to see you. So, yeah.
And between you and me, I think the llama was planted by Rudy. I mean, there's so many parallels and the humor, the
Hard work.
hard work. And the last thing I'd like to add is that I did a recording in 2013. I asked John, I said, John, you're not going to be around forever. What do you want to have happen here on this land? 2013, he says, I want this to be a place of pilgrimage. So that has been in the mix since then, and I just recently discovered the footage of that, him speaking that. So it's like, it's in the ethers, and I so love being here. And I promise you, if you come, you will be nourished, you will be fed.
Is it on the website?
Yes.
Great. And the website is?
Well, I will send you a link to the page of that.
But it's
Okay.
on the rudymovie.com.
rudymovie.com?
website.
Yeah.
Rudy, okay, I'll have to put that on for everybody, but rudymovie.com, great.
It's up to all of us
Rudy
to support this
Movie.
place, so we have a place to go. So,
Well, I mean, there's our group, and certainly other groups are, I believe, welcome, and the Orivatsu is its own organization and group. So this place is alive and well, but, you know, all of you, who feel like, a ride into the country, this is always here, going up to see Rudy, wiping away some of the leaves that have fallen or whatever it may be, is a gift. It's a real gift sorry, Ma, yes.
Oh, I was reminded, I think it was last year. So last year, Lama and all of us were working here, and then Bruce showed up and Blanche, and I think 4 or 5 other people. And then the people also from Mariama, which was another lineage, were also here that day. And Michael was working the excavator. And what happened is this huge rock was birthed here. And it's over in the Mani wall. And it's the foundation of the Mani wall. And so, but it was true, the lineages came together that day, and then the land said, okay, I got something to show you. So please also take advantage of walking around the Mani wall, because you'll see the rock that the land birthed.
And I'll add to that, the Lama Ringbar has big vision for here. So it's gonna keep emerging. It will become a place of attraction for a lot of people. But we're early in the game, and we're beneficiaries of that. So.
and also, the stupa, which was built for Rudy's honor, basically, has 4 entrances to it. One is Rudy's, one is
Nityananda's,
Nityananda,
Shakyamuni Buddha's, and Padmasambhava's.
One is,
Yeah. The stupa is, the vase of the stupa is filled with like thousands of satsas, these little cast sculptures, and the side devoted to Rudy is all satsas of Rudy, and likewise Nityananda, Padmasambhava, and Shakyamuni Buddha. This is kind of Silvera's own vision of this mandala of 4 teachers,
Right.
but it's quite beautiful.
And Zach here was one of the people working on that from the beginning, and honored to have him back here. His best friend Wendy, and all I can tell you is a lot of work's gone on. Silvera's coming back Tuesday and to go back and do more work. So it's in progress. It's in progress. Enough talk. If you want to have some lunch, please do. And then the walk to the Rudy Shrine. If you don't know how to go there, at one point you can follow me and Blanche, or anybody who's making it. It's across the road. There's a road that just leads right up there. And there's a guy named Aaron who lives right next to that road, and he can also direct you up to that space. And you know, you just go, stand, say thank you, sit if you can, have a moment, and you know, feel what gratitude feels like. Thank you.